Right then, I am Isis of Magical Domain, and I welcome you to this, the second part of my lecture on the face of the Creator. I hope that in this moment you are sitting here and you are sitting there, rejoicing in the peace and the tranquility of Sankara, and indeed in the love and in the light of the one beloved, infinite Creator Self and the Creator Whole that you are. Once again, I am Isis of Magical Domain, often referred to as Isis of Ancient Egypt. No idea why. I might have done a few things here and there during those days. We might go into that a little bit as we sit here. I do want to, before we get going, bring a couple of things to clarification, mainly one thing, as after my first part of this lecture, we received a few questions about the meaning of my use of the word magic. Now, of course, when I speak of the magical domain, I refer to what my husband, the one you know as Saint Germain, has spoken about regarding the pocket dimensions. That is, of course, what I refer to. But when I refer to the word magic, I do not per se, of course, refer to pulling a rabbit out of my hat, let's say, because children are watching here in the room. I do refer, however, to the original dalin of the word magic. And this time we are not going to go back to the Old French or the Latin, but instead to the dalin itself, because the word magic comes from ma, shi, ka, ma, shi, ka, a geotrinity or a infinotrinity, if you want to refer to it in that state of its expression, of which ma refers to the grand state of illusion, that is this Ekara, the illusions of form, time, space, death, exchange, and separation, and in which she refers to the celebration of these things, and in which ka refers to the flow of life force itself. So when I talk about magic, I talk about the celebration of the life force flow within the illusion. This is indeed the one and true magic, where there is no workings, hidden compartments, and indeed men behind curtains, hiding away, pretending to be deities, while indeed they are just men in little trousers. And don't get me started about your religions either. I believe Ekara already took care of that recently. So when I refer to magic and ma shi ka, I refer indeed to the fact that even inside of the world of illusion, inside of the world of your Ekara, your holographic training grounds, even here there is no thing that Sankara and the permanent states cannot reach. Savok, through the lens of Mashika, is not the underlying factor of this reality. It in itself is built up from the building blocks, from the permanent states of, and the immutable elements of sankhara. When knowing this, and when applying this, indeed, your actions, creations and manifestations can look like magic. It has been said many times that any advanced technology, advanced enough, will be indistinguishable from magic. But the same also holds true for any technology that is simplex enough, like sankhara, like the permanent states and the immutable elements. And I happen to know that some of you here, and hopefully also some of you out there watching and taking part in this moment, are becoming aware of the simplicity of sankhara and of the immediate effect it has when applied. And indeed, when applied, even on the level of thought, even then, the results have nothing to do with magnitude, nothing to do with scope and size. It matters not whether you are fixing your mood and returning it to the state of sankhara, or whether you are fixing your body, some ailment, and returning it to the state of sankhara, or whether you are changing the weather, or whether you are traveling through time and space, or any of these things. They all require exactly the same simplicity. That is the beauty of it. So, I wanted to clarify that before we go on here today. It has been an interesting few days since our last class. Obviously, Leila, the Pakwan Yinsan, and myself have been observing the whole of Imzaia consciousness since my previous presentation. And indeed, there has been quite a bit of evolution that has taken place. In fact, it was only a few hours ago, in my experience, that I sat with Leila in a place that in Honomea is known as Smoking Lotus, one of our favorite bars and restaurants, of course. We all hang out. Think of it as our version of Central Perk, for those of you that like Friends. So there we were hanging, just finishing our early dinner, after having already arrived actually for a late lunch. But drinks came in between, so it became an early dinner. And at some point, I turned to her and I said, Leila, do you think they are ready? Do you think they are ready for the Queen's chamber? And she turns to me with that Mona Lisa look, and she says, Cici, her name for me, Cici, I think they are ready. So today, this second part of my lecture will be titled The Queen's Chamber. For not only will we enter the Queen's chamber with you all today, we will also move through it. And I, Isis, that is the best name for you to think of me. As I said, it is an exclusive girlfriend enterprise. Today I, Isis, will be presenting this journey to you, and I will be guiding you through it. Before we begin, I must say this is not your typical exercise. Once you start this is not something you merely switch on, turn off, and you certainly cannot push the pause button. When this begins, it begins. That means that once you do, this will be a type of continuous journey. One that will become a comfortable companion, if you will, alongside your daily flow and your daily activities, underlying the currents of it all, and one that at each time of silence you can return to in full and continue. So remember that. Now I must say that, of course, I will not be selling tickets for any of you to be flying over to Egypt, visit the pyramids, and enter the Queen's chamber. There was a time, however, that this was required. I told you already about my time in ancient Egypt, or at least some of it. So you will understand that at that time we were dealing with a state of deep geometry, a state of deep sleep, deep dreaming, and in some cases deep nightmares, you could say. This is why, to undertake the journey to and through the Queen's chamber, it actually required a physical building, which you now know as the pyramids. It also required, in many cases, years, and in some cases months, of physical and mental preparation. Preparation that certainly was not easy on the mind and not easy on the body. A type of initiation, you could say. One that we do not require to go into deeply today because of you being in a state of infinometry. It is for that reason that the Queen's chamber can be invoked within you and surrounding you from whatever location you engage with it. Very different than the time that came before. Also different is the need to purify and to prepare the physical body. Once again, this came with a regimen of severe training, physical training, exercise, fasting, all sorts of chakra type massage exercises, which are, for those of you that don't know it, very deep tissue massages, very deep, to the point that you think it cannot go deeper, aimed at purging something that technically cannot be purged because it exists beyond time and space. So therefore aimed at purging the chakra centers in order for the initiate to be able to access the chakra system unhindered by the vibrational status and the ebb and flow and the rise and fall of the vibrational chakra system. This also required a specific location that was near the pyramids that still stand today, although the location where the initiates gathered no longer does, as it was destroyed by the so-called high priests that I told you about after my time. In this location, however, all of this physical preparation and also mental preparation took place. A little side note that you might like to hear and that you may think is amusing is that the building was constructed in such a way that it sat over a type of canals which were built in such a way that crocodiles would move through it underneath the structure. And crocodiles are well known for their horizontal positioning of the spine. Therefore, in times of deep geometry, which also goes for other beings such as the honu, the sea turtle, and also technically, of course, the whale and the dolphin, and some others such as the snake, all move with their spine, if you will, in a horizontal fashion compared to the human, compared to the other types of animals which technically no longer have the spine fully horizontal but are bent in a vertical fashion at the end, near their tail and upward. But some of these animals are perfectly horizontal, and this causes an energy field when subtle enough to tune into that can assist the initiate to purge the mental states. But this is no longer of any importance. It is just a little historical fact that you might be interested in. Of course, even though in these times of infinometry there no longer is any need really for these physical preparations as they once existed, and certainly not to visit a specific location in space, what is still required, or at least highly advised, is the purging and the clearing of the mental state. Now, we have spoken about this a great deal. It is also why we introduced the concept of thought sankhara, because many of you get complicated when it comes to the flow of Dalin, the flow of sankhara through the system, and especially the use of Dalin. For some, there are expressions of Dalin that in their languages, such as, for instance, an example being Russia, da, of course, means yes, and this already can cause an easy mental block. Also, for those that do not have these comparisons in their language, the language that you use to express Dalin in can often be too descriptive, much like you're using English or your own mother tongue to describe rather than to create. For that reason, as I already stated, we have introduced the concept of thought sankhara to simply think your way out of mental states. I believe the Pakwan Yinsan even today, before this class, shared on your social media and on your website a simple technique to purify the state of love when you feel splintered or split between wanting to be with someone or having to do a task in service. And she talks about how from the sankhara level you very quickly can realize that the state of frustration or the state of anger, or the state of fear, or the state of guilt, or the state of grief, or any of these things are ultimately very quickly resolved when you allow Sankhara to do the thinking for you. You then quickly come to the realization, hang on a minute, I love this person and I love this thing. These two states of love are the same thing, so there is no separation, only in the illusion of time and space. And you now know that even that, every moment in time and every moment in space, all links up to the same lin point. So ultimately, there is no true separation between any moment in time and space, any being, and anything that makes up you. But anyway, very easy to do this type of technique. Also very easy, of course, to purge yourself from mental states. You already know the permanent states that exist in your head and that exist in your heart. You also know that you are exploring the ones that exist in your belly. Also, in the last presentations that have happened now, you have heard a lot about the numbers 3, 6, and 9. Now, as we begin this journey, these numbers will become extremely important to you. And before we go any further, I would like to take a little side note here for all of those that have now become aware of the shift from geometry to the state of infinometry, but find themselves still stuck in old habits such as old school numerology, astrology, and those sorts of complex attempts to read reality, as it were. Good news, not necessarily for the marketing team, but very good news for all of you, because all of that has literally become as simple as 3, 6, and 9. This sequence fits underlying everything, and as you have heard a while ago, even underlying the permutations of the permanent states that you manifest this reality with. It underlies, as I will explain later, the movement of your Merkaba, the movement of the Merkava, and everything. Where you once needed to examine, as an astrologer or an astronomer, the stars from a scientific or a more metaphysical perspective, it does not matter, to find out exactly what would be a good time to undertake something, or whether there was a retrograde going on, which may for most not be a good time to undertake something, except for Imzaia, of course. You always were quite opposite, weren't you? But any of these things, and any of these complex systems, all now reduce to the simple concept of 3, 6, 9. Think about the movement of your linear calendar. You have the 3rd day of the month, the 6th day of the month, the 9th day of the month, the 12th day of the month, which once again refers to 3, the 15th day, the 18th day, and the 21st day, and so on. Each time you have this underlying sequence that is running. Now, unlike old school astrology, numerology, where you were dealing with black and white type concepts, where one moment was good and another moment was bad to undertake something. Here we are only talking about optimal times of flow. So imagine you put out a presentation such as this one into consciousness, into the world, and you do it on the 1st of the month. Nothing wrong with that, of course. You start a new enterprise, you start a new venture, whatever. You start a journey on the 2nd of the month. Nothing wrong with that. But you will notice in this infinometry setting that whatever it is you do, and now I'm only referring to the calendar, but this goes to everything else, we'll get to that in a moment. Whatever it is you do, the flow will be optimized at the 3, 6, and 9 moment. And we'll find a full zenith in the moment of 12, which once again is a 3. And the sequence starts again. This is very important to remember. It means that when you come up with something you want to do on the days, if to keep it to the calendar for a second, on the days in between, you will find yourself more in the valley of your creation, in a peaceful part of your creation, and your creation or your action may take, in service to the whole, in this case, a couple of days to reach that arrival in the state of consciousness and to reach that zenith. And it will continue to travel through that point in the 6th and in the 9th and continue to increase that way. Now, this goes for everything else. When you are taking actions, and I'm not trying to turn you all into OCD type beings, no obsessive compulsive disorders needed here, but when you are working with whatever it is you're doing, you will find that the 3rd action, the 6th action, the 9th action, in whatever it is, will find the highest point of expression in consciousness. This removes the need for any type of reading, star systems, or external realities outside of you. Even when you will be studying something, when you will be sharing something with someone, when you are using your words and that sort of flow, when you begin to adhere to the 3 and the 6 and the 9, you will continue to progress your experience. So they are not about expression. Ich, the light expression in the heart, is about expression, as you will see during the journey. But the 3, the 6, and the 9 are about progression, with the 12th point being the zenith, and then it begins to repeat. Now I say this because as we will begin this journey, as we enter the Queen's chamber, and I will begin talking you through it, the sequence I am describing will become very important. For those of you that wish to work in the Queen's chamber with the sequencing and the permutations of Dalin itself, using the creative expression, you will notice that you will be focusing on the flow coming through your chakra system, and you will focus on Da, Ba, Va, and there will be a pause naturally before you continue. And so it will continue every 3 sequences all the way into the belly chakra. For those of you who find currently the use of Dalin, even in English, love, joy, freedom, as being too mental, or if you find yourself unable to exit the descriptive and enter the creative when it comes to language, then you will notice that the exercise includes the use of breath to work with the 3-6-9 sequence. So you will see that whatever you do, you can even do the entire process wordlessly and just by focusing on something as simple as your breath, which, as you now of course know, is referencing one of the immutable elements in the head. So that is very important. And when I speak of breath, as you enter the exercise in a bit, I ask you to use the sequence in a calm and relaxed fashion. So we are not talking about 3 inhales at a sort of stress level as not like that, but merely three very gentle inhaling moves until you hit the zenith, and then you simply release it again. That focus is all you will need at any point in your day, whether you are 100% committed to focusing on the Queen's chamber, or whether you are busy with other tasks and you find yourself losing track of the chamber or even of Sankara, then simply that simple breath. 3 gentle inhales until you reach zenith, and the relaxing out-breath is all you truly need to re-enter the state of Sankara and to re-enter your awareness of the chamber. So, enough said. As you start, you have 2 options. You either take yourself outside to a place with friendly trees surrounding you. This could be a circle of trees. It could even be one tree. It could also be a circle of favorite plants, like the ones positioned in this room in which this is taking place. But it doesn't have to be an exterior space, because there is also the option to invoke the space of the friendly trees, no matter where you are. You may be in an apartment building in Hong Kong with thousands of withering souls surrounding you. You could be in the countryside, somewhere on a mountain even, with no other human in sight for miles and miles. You could be sitting in a bus, you could be on your toilet, you could be in your bed. But within you, you can invoke this space. A simple patch of green surrounded by friendly trees. Now, why trees? Because this journey is one that is longer than the duration, technically speaking, of your lifetime. Far, far longer. Therefore, your mind, as it is limited to this lifetime, is not going to be able to guide and accompany you. The only being that you know of in the physical universe that has the ability to be around long enough to be a constant companion on this journey, as it will take you through time and space in both directions, is the tree. It has no limit to its ability to exist, no limit to stump its growth, except for when it hinders other beings around it, or of course when it is aggressively removed by another species. I don't have to go into detail which species that might be. But it is not the canine. Yes, the tree. The constant companion that is so constant, so quiet and observant, that most of the time you forget to notice they are even there. You take them, and not in a negative way of course, but you take them for granted. You see them more as objects, permanent things that are just standing there and doing their thing. But what you don't think of is that for a tree, life is very different. Life can last for thousands and thousands of years. The conditions of space, the location, in the best case scenario, never changes. But the conditions of time around it are constantly in flux. Most of the beings that it encounters as it stands there being a tree move too fast, mainly in their minds, to notice it, to actually connect with it, and to communicate with it. And in such a way, a tree is almost like a ghost, observing those that it loves around them, but mainly remaining unnoticed and rarely touched, rarely seen for its wisdom and for what it truly is, an ancient companion through time. There is another reason why in this journey we commence at the place of the friendly trees, and that we use trees as this constant companion. And that is because of their time frame. A tree can technically exist as long as the duration of the universe. There is no limit to its possible expansion. Because of that time frame, its conditions of experiencing time are tachyonic. It experiences all of time and space in one moment, which is its existence. Now, technically, of course, this goes for all of you as well. But your physical shapes are designed for shorter intervals in this Ekara, while its physical shape is designed for a constant presence, at least the possibility of it, within this Ekara. And therefore, every moment in time and space for the tree is a tachyonic portal to the Lin point, and in that way, it has a completely different vision of you and who you are. It sees you for the Creator self. And within one glance, one touch, one observation, it can see all of your lifetimes, all of your expressions, and it can reach all the way to the being that you are as you engage this Ekara. Now that is a friend. That is a companion. And no, I am not going to make Groot jokes about this, although there are those behind me desperate for me to do so. I must say, as I said when they wanted me to sing Walk Like an Egyptian, fat chance. So it is for these reasons and more, but these are enough to share with you now, why the tree companion is such an important facet on this journey through the Queen's chamber. We had an original 12 trees standing near the grounds of this training location for initiates to undertake this journey. And these were indeed the original 12 trees that were manifested within this Ekara. They no longer remain today, as they were destroyed by the high priests that I described last time. But their presence lives on in every single tree within this domain. Your science already knows that there is a mycelium network, which some may be interested in exploring further, that connects all trees. It doesn't merely connect them through space, however, it also connects them through time. The mushroom is a very interesting being on that level, which for other purposes we will discuss another time. But for now, remain with the trees. You have either found a space to go to, a park, a forest, a field, or you have created one. By now, as you listened to my tale of companionship with these splendid, splendid beings. As you sit there, I ask you to become aware of the arrival of 4 beings that you allow to move beyond the tree line that surrounds you and to take place near you in a circle in the position of north, east, south, and west. These beings will take the shape of the lion, as the lion is the representative in the animal kingdom of the Pa. We will come back to them later in this journey. For now, like the friendly tree, allow the friendly lion into your consciousness and sit with it. While that happens, a little side note on the animal kingdom that I would like to give you after the explanation given by the 7 sisters as to the canine and the feline and the rest of the animal kingdom, and how indeed extremely exquisite it is. First time ever, really, that a species such as you is undertaking the ascension of their social memory complex, their totality as a beingness, merged with the animal species through the act of the look, as has been explained in these earlier teachings. The canine, the feline, any other form within the animal kingdom will become one with the human evolution and evolve together as one soul. This means that there is, from the perspective of ether sexuality, as I have explained to you before, no longer any difference between the soul of a human being and the soul of an animal being, not one iota of difference. This means that, incarnatively speaking, there is going to be a great crossing, some of which, sitting here, have already become aware of over the years, of course, as this happens, back and forth through the timeline, a great crossing between animal journeys and human journeys, animal incarnations and human incarnations. And many of your animal friends have already crossed the bridge between the incarnative cycles of themselves in the animal body and of themselves in the human body, but also the other way around. A little example is, to make a small joke which is also truthful, the great Stuart Wilde, who wanted so badly to incarnate as a husky that could read, so that he had the lifetime to read his books. And he did. He took advantage immediately. Anyway, so that is what is happening with your animal kingdom. And this is quite significant, because if you think about the beloved Ra, a social memory complex that is going to be continuing its conversation with you after the conclusion of my classes here, then this being, this entity known as Ra, is the collective of all the beings that once existed, all the human type beings that once existed on the planet Venus, in another physical dimension than the one that you are experiencing Venus on. From your perspective, of course, Venus in the third density expression of itself is a very hostile world, high radiation and impossible to exist for the human body. But for the beings that started in the fourth density, such as Ra and its species once did, for them it was a paradise-like world that, of course, had its mental difficulties, but physically was pretty much a walk in the park, with a beautiful, balanced nature and a beautiful, balanced weather system that would give them basically all the food they wanted. So in the society, as an example of Ra, the concept of money and exchanging of goods was never created. From their perspective, their planet of Venus was a gem. And even there, of course, as Ra will tell you, there were many who would dim to the light and who would prefer the shadows. It has nothing to do, these sorts of things, with the external conditions. It has to do with the conditions of the mind within. But here, on this earth, as you as a species will rise into the expression of a social memory complex, which does not mean that you will all become one being, but that you will gain the ability, much like Ra, eventually to communicate to entire species and individuals throughout these Ekarayas as a collective voice, assisting from an angle that is already a higher state. You will have that ability too. But when you gain it, the animal kingdom will be there with you. You will be one species, one social memory complex. And that has never happened before. It greatly pleases us in the consequence that the evolution of the Pa will expand because of it. But this is taking it too far for today's lecture. Just remember this. As you focus on the lions that are with you and the trees that are with you. And I guess that you can tell by now that also in the description of this exercise, I am not following the same typical presentation than usual. It is not my idea for you to knock yourself out during this talk. I want you to be fully aware of everything I am saying here before you properly start this exercise after listening. So while you are already sampling and creating these spaces, eventually once my presentation is over and you find your first quiet moment of the day, either you then go and find your trees and your lions, or you create a space within and allow them to visit you there. So, once you have found yourself comfortable under those circumstances, once you have familiarized yourself with these trees, with their experience of time that you may touch the smallest hint of as you connect with them, and as you feel the heart of the Pa represented in the lions that are with you, there will come a moment when you will become aware, a very, very simple moment, which we call Ohami, a perfect moment, if you will, where you will become aware of an energy flow, a sort of golden light coming down in front of you from your left, coming down at a 45-degree angle and coming into your field and into your chakra system. Once you become aware of this, you focus on your breath. 3 times in, slowly, and then exhale slowly, and you continue with that movement. As you do, you will be noticing that the golden light enters you and your chakra system and begins to flow through the head chakra as a spiral that surrounds you and begins to go down into the second chakra and moves all around you again and goes down into the third chakra. For those of you that need to keep things simple, to allow that movement to happen and that manifestation to occur, just use these breaths. For others who feel more comfortable with Dalin, you can begin to focus on Da, Ba, and Va as you breathe these 3 breaths and exhale at the Va. You then continue with Ra and allow it to enter the second chakra into Ka and Sa. And after Ra, Ka, and Sa, with these 3 breaths, you allow yourself to exhale again. And you go to Na and Fa and into the belly chakra, where you will encounter Pa. For it is Pa itself that is underlying the manifestation of your permanent states as they have been described, and it is Pa that is already there in each of the quadrants of the third chakra prior to the identification and the manifestation of the active ingredients or the permanent states that you will manifest there. But ultimately it does not matter whether you use the Dalin or whether you use the breath or whether you even forget to do this. Because once, after this transmission, you will have entered the Queen's chamber, there is simply no going back. Already you have learned previously that this Sankara flow that I just described, whether you are aware of it or not, whether you accept it or not, whether you resist it or not, is there. You are merely becoming aware of the infusion of the golden light as it comes in, as it goes through the chakra system, all the way down into the belly chakra, into Pa. And for some of you, as you go through that flow, you may begin to see the seeds take shape, take form, but you don't have to. At that point, once it has come all the way in, you allow it to move back up. So it will come out as you keep breathing the 3 breaths and the exhale. It will come out of the belly chakra and move back through the heart chakra, back through the head chakra, and out. Now, an interesting thing happens when you do this, or in fact 2 interesting things will happen when you do this. The first being that as this golden energy goes down, and especially when it becomes back on itself and begins to move upward, as it hits the heart chakra again, you will notice that the light that was coming down, that you are becoming aware of, an existing flow that is always happening, did not originate at the top of your perception. It originated here. Because the flow that you are seeing, the golden light that you are observing, is Ich. It is the immutable element of light that is pouring out of your heart chakra and moving upward and downward in the spiral that I described at the same time. This is the movement of the Merkaba. Once you become aware of this flow, your Merkaba will begin to spin. When I say it will begin to spin, of course, do realize that technically it is always spinning, but it is spinning or has been spinning within this field of Lavat, within this holographic training exercise, at the same speed of the spin of the exercise itself. And therefore, it will come across as having been immobile. It hasn't technically been immobile. It has technically been spinning slightly under the speed of the movement of this Ekara as it spins, which you recognize as the speed of light. It is for this reason, this slightly slower movement of your Merkaba, that you have experienced the state of the speed of light as slightly higher than 1, as has been explained recently. So this exercise, at the beginning of the exercise, as you become aware of the flow of this Ich, the flow of this light, as I have described now, will begin to equalize and will very quickly equalize your consciousness with the speed of light. When that happens, a second very interesting thing to mention takes place. When that happens, you will look up. I have not mentioned at the beginning of this that you could choose to lay down like one did in the Queen's chamber, and then you are by default looking up, of course. But you could also have chosen to sit down in your natural environment, and at that point you will be drawn to look up. Once the flow of this Ich, this immutable element, and don't forget that the Ich includes all the other elements, will move out of your chakra field again. And as you look up, you will see, which I can only describe as a tunnel, but it will not look like a tunnel. The best thing to describe it in nature is as though you are standing in the heart, underneath of a twister of clouds in a massive storm, a massive hurricane. But it will not feel like a hurricane, beloveds. It will feel calm, and it will not be dark and gray and blue. It will be white and golden. The clouds will be moving slowly in a tunnel, and they will look golden, and behind them will radiate a light that is whiter and more brilliant than you have ever seen before in your physical lifetime. When that hits, you will have entered the Queen's chamber. Now, before we go on, it is important to note that, of course, as this flow comes into the body, and as you become aware of the flow of Sankara, whether it is through the breath or through the use of Dalin, as I said earlier, it can be the mental states, the prisms of belief systems and such, the addiction and attraction to Savok and to the mind, ego, personality that makes it difficult to complete this flow. And it is important in that moment to realize that it is not so that the flow is not completing, because, as I've said, it is constantly occurring, but that your focus on it will drop, that your awareness of it and literally your ability to perceive it with your senses might fall away. And then it is important to either choose the condition of love unconditionally, the state of love, and to allow yourself to flow into whatever has taken your attraction, whatever has taken your focus, and to deal with that in great love, understanding that underlying that space-time expression that you will be entering into is the condition of the Queen Chamber as it continues. And then you return to it after the distraction ends. This could also be a mental distraction. It doesn't have to be an external one, but you deal with it in the same way. It is only when you will be allowing yourself to complete a full cycle of this flow downward and upward, which does not seem like a long time, but these are worlds and dimensions that you will be traveling through in a way, as we are speaking of it. It is only when this can happen in an uninterrupted sankhara flow, without any identification with the ego, mind, body, and any identification with Savok, that you will be able to, as the flow leaves your chakra system again, to observe the so-called tunnel of golden clouds. Again, this will be a very calm event. What technically is happening in that moment is the opening of a portal. You are leaving your locked-in coordinates and are becoming present in the Ekara in a fluid way. But then it begins. As you begin to ascend this tunnel, and as you begin to collapse portal after portal after portal, you will begin to become aware, one after the other, of a string of lifetimes, a string of faces, a string of personalities and egos and emotions, all of which will be yours. As you begin to journey through the Queen's Chamber, this means that you have established a permanence of personality in Sankhara, which is a direct entanglement with your creator self that entered into this Ekara. And now you are on a journey through every single one of your lifetimes, and you will be the witness to every one of your actions, and you will have the ability to make new choices in each one of these actions. Now you may think this is going to take forever, and in a way you could argue it will. But, and there is an important but, your experience of time flow is going to become very different as you traverse these portals, each of which will be a full lifetime lived by you. Your initial experiences on the first day, and maybe the second day, and the third day or so of the chamber will begin where 1 minute of your experience will be the same as 1 minute of an experience had in one of those lifetimes, 1-on-1. Clock time here will be clock time there. But as you begin to transform these minutes that you will be living and be the awareness behind the personality that you temporarily take on, you will be the awareness behind it. As you begin to make different choices than the ones you will be confronted with, and as you begin to place those lifetimes and those few seconds and few minutes and few hours into a place of service to the whole, an acceleration will begin to occur. And by the time you are on the 6th and the 9th, and especially the 12th attempt of working with this exercise, a breakthrough of 12 uninterrupted entries into the state of Sankara as I have described, a breakthrough will occur where time passage within the chamber will accelerate and continue to accelerate vastly. And there will come a point during the exercise that you will find yourself again at the awareness here, and it will become a cluster, an almost uninterpretable mix of all sorts of things, all sorts of expressions, all sorts of lifetimes, and you will find yourself zooming further and further back from it. And this journey continues each time you enter the chamber and are aware of it, or return to the chamber and are aware of it, but it also continues while you have removed yourself temporarily, or your focus at least, from the chamber in order to take part inside of this Ekara, interact with others, do your tasks and that sort of thing. It will continue. And you will have to become aware of a background radiation that is constantly ongoing. And the biggest mistake you could make then is to identify with those, because you're going to feel all sorts of emotional states, all sorts of things, that all of which have happened to you as an expression in one of these lifetimes. And constantly you will have the ability to correct, to correct, to correct. But it doesn't end there. There will come a moment that you will be complete with that part of the journey through the chamber. At that point, you will have met and balanced each and every one of your own expressed lifetimes within this Ekara. Then the same journey will continue, but you will no longer be dealing with your own lifetimes. You will no longer be dealing with your own faces. You will be dealing with living the awareness of every life that has ever been lived inside of this Ekara by any being, human, animal, insect, plant, energy, everything. And when I say inside of this Ekara, I am not merely talking about planet Earth. It is bigger than that, as you know. And you will experience every single one. Every single one of those experiences, as it accelerates and accelerates and accelerates, is a portal on your way out that you are breaking through. From a technical perspective of what once was on that board, you are literally traversing every single wormhole of every single virtual geometrical particle that the Lin point has formed. And you are collapsing your entanglement of your consciousness with it by removing the karma of each of those moments in time and space, by balancing the equation and making the sankhara choices. Now this looks and sounds like an endless enterprise, but once again remember that your time experience within the chamber as you practice will accelerate to a point that lifetimes will be processed within minutes. This is, of course, when you begin to reach the climax of the whole experience, and it comes when you have carried, have worn the face of all of your lifetimes and all of the living beings and the living things within this Ekara. And there's a reason for that. Because once this has happened, you will understand the face of the Creator. The face of the Creator is the face of every lifetime that you have ever lived and every lifetime that has ever been lived inside of this Ekara. You blend all of those together and you will see the face of the Creator, because you will see yourself exiting the Ekara, and you will exit through the famous infinity sign, and you will see yourself standing there, and you will return to yourself. That is the journey to the face of the Creator. And that is the journey through the Queen's chamber. Now, I have told you that this is not a normal description of such an exercise, because you can understand that it is hard to talk you through this. It is something that you must undertake by yourself. And even though, of course, you will have yet to undertake this first step on this journey after this transmission is over, for all of you that are willing to undertake it, I can safely say that by taking part in this transmission, it has begun. All you must do is place your focus on this environment that we started this description with and follow these steps, and the rest will begin to happen naturally. The 3 companions will continue to assist you, as well as the Pa lions. But I, Isis, in this moment, here and now, commit myself on a permanent basis, as permanent and permanent can be, to be there every step of the way for any being that attempts to undertake this journey through the Queen's chamber, starting with this transmission, permanently. So from that perspective, the rest of my assistance when it comes to this journey will be given internally as you are taking it. That does, of course, not mean that you cannot work with myself and other teachers, for those of you that have direct access to us, to ask your questions or to send in your questions and experiences and remarks and ask where we can be of assistance. That is, of course, possible, but most of it will be happening within. Having said all of that, I believe it would be wise to leave it at this for now, so that we can pick this up during the third part of this presentation. But remember that the entire journey of the path through the Queen's chamber is the reconstruction of the face of the Creator, due to you placing yourself as the awareness behind every look, every word, and every breath that you have ever lived and that has ever been lived. In other words, you will, in this journey, single-handedly reweave the entire experience of the Ekara until you have returned to the state that you are as you started all of this. So welcome to the chamber. Welcome to this journey you have already begun. And as such, I, Isis, of magical domain, sit here as I rejoice in the love and in the light of you all as the one infinite beloved Creator that you are. Be well. We will pick this up again soon, and of course, I will see you sooner within. And so it is.